Hello everyone and welcome to the Croft circuit for this two-day Caterham BRSCC race meeting. So much great entertainment coming your way this afternoon and tomorrow as well, with a whole host of Caterham Motorsport Championships racing here this weekend. We've also got the 6th round of the Fun Cup Endurance Championship, and tomorrow we're joined by the BRSCC's latest series, the Nankang Tyres City Car Cup, which is enjoying a phenomenal debut season. The cars behind me are those competing in the Caterham 310R Championship. We've got Harry Cook on the pole position. Pete Walters, the championship leader, only third on the grid though. Harry is his nearest championship rival, so this could be a really significant round of the championship. Andy McEwen down here in the assembly area. Up in the commentary box though, watching all of the action, is Scott Woodward. Scott, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Andy, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to not only Croft Circuit here trackside, but also on the BRSCC live stream as well. We're looking forward to 2 days of fantastic racing, as Andy said, and we are getting ready to start racing here with our first of our 4 Caterham Championships that are competing this weekend. The first of which is the Caterham 310R Championship, which is the fastest Caterhams that you'll see all weekend. And they're going to be heading out for their first of their half-an-hour races to get things underway. So as the car make their way around onto the formation lap for round to the grid for their first race. We'll be able to give you the grid for them very shortly. But just to recap these cars, these are essentially the same cars that you would find that have been going up through from the Academy all the way up through Road Sport, 270s and into that 310R Championship. This is the ultimate evolution of what starts out as a Caterham Academy race car, and these cars carry a 1.6 litre Caterham Ford Sigma engine, around about 152 brake horsepower. They feature a limited slip diff and Avon ZZS track tyres. They weigh about 620 kilograms, and they are pretty rapid little bits of kit. Of course, the Caterham's been around for decades. It's been one of those refined small kit cars that's been building and building into its own right, and Caterham now as a brand has now become so strong that it has plenty of international bases, lots of international dealers, and in many cases always provides some great racing up and down the order. So as the cars then make their way around onto the round to the grid, we will now be able to give you how they sit as they come round for this first race of the weekend. And looking at the grid, it's set to be Harry Cook that will start on pole position. He took pole by quite a margin, by almost about over 3 tenths of a second from David Yates on the front row of the grid. So it'll be Harry Cook and David Yates who line up on the front row. David Yates is one of his better qualifying performances, starting in second place. The second row of the grid is Pete Walters, and he will start. He's the current championship leader coming into the weekend. He will start alongside Lars Hoffman. And Lars, who has been a 2-time champion in the last 2 seasons. He was Road Sport champion in 2019 and 270R champion in 2020, and now he'll be looking to he's been trying to push on to try and get up there as high as he can, but he's currently sat at the moment coming into the weekend on drop scores with 108 points in 8th, whereas the leader, Pete Walters, is on 144 after drop scores. So the second row is Pete Walters and Lars Alexander Hoffman. Third row is Andy Lees in car number 2, and Lewis Thompson, who pretty much has been the driver to watch out for, because he's been charging his way up through the field, and that's the car to watch out for. Only qualifying 6th, so he's making some real progress up the order with some fantastic race victories in recent times. Row 4 is Harry Landy, and he will start alongside James Wingfield on the 4th row. Then it's Jeff Price and Gary Curtis who will round out the top 10. Andrew Murgatroyd on the 6th row then comes next alongside Douglas Christie, followed by Stephen Metcalf and Dave Bullock, then Chris Welch and Sam Bailey, and then Henry Williams, who will start at the back of the grid after he had an off in qualifying on his very first flying lap. He won't thank me for reminding me of that one, and he will start from the back after getting out there and doing 3 laps to get himself towards the grid. So looks like we're going to get racing this time by some lap out of assembly, lap out of the pits. The green flag has flown, which means we should be ready to get our first Caterham race of the weekend underway. The 5-second board is up, and it will be a sprint down to turn 1 between Harry Cook and David Yates, who can win the whole shot into Clairvaux for the first time. We're away and racing here at Croft. A cracking start from the outside, the front row from David Yates to head down towards Clairvaux for the first time. They will be side by side, and Yates has got a fly as he heads down towards the right-hander. So Yates that leads, Hoffman's up to second place. Around the outside goes Pete Walters up to third. Big tail slide there between Harry Cook. 2 cars already off in the background. One is Andy Lees. The other one is, I think that's Jeff Price. So both Jeff Price and Andy Lees have got involved up at the first few corners, but they turn their way through Hawthorns up to the S's for the first time, and it is going to be the car of David Yates, but Lars Hoffman's charging along and looking to try and get down the outside to make a move into Tower Bend. So Hoffman, already with the slipstream down towards the right-hander, has got through. Andy Lees is limping with damage to his left rear. Here comes Pete Walters to the outside for second place. So after a great start for David Yates, he's down to third already and could lose more places because Harry Cook and co are going to try and get onto his tail as quick as possible. So out of Tower Corner, up for the Jim Clark S's for the first time. Looks like Hoffman's got the advantage, but Walters is there in second. Of course, Walters, as we said, comes into the weekend leading by 13 points on drop score, so he's going to try and get as many points as he can because we're into that crucial point of the championship now. We've got this weekend and 2 more, particularly at Snetterton, and then we have Cadwell Park to finish off the season. And this is going to be where it's all critical to score those vital points because drop scores will come into play in those last couple of rounds, and it really can make the difference between winning the championship or find yourself back down the order. Into the complex for the first time. It's Hoffman that leads, Walters second. It's then third place for David Yates. Fourth up there is now Lewis Thompson. He's certainly not one to watch out, but he's in the sort of orangey, sort of brownie, iridescent coloured car in fourth position. Wide there for Pete Walters on the exit of the hairpin, and straight back through has gone David Yates in second place. But there are yellow flags, double waved yellows. It might be possible for the stranded car of Andy Lees because we saw that car was struggling earlier on, so he might be in trouble. Hoffman leads the way though. Yates is currently in second place, but he's so Walters Yates came across the line in second place. Walters has got back through by the time they turn in through Clairvaux and Hawthorns. Thompson's into fourth, Cook is fifth, but it's Wingfield, Landy, Murgatroyd, Sam Bailey, who's in his first Caterham racing weekend, I believe this weekend. He's an ex-Mazda racer. And then Douglas Christie rounds out the top 10 as they head down the back straight and towards Tower Bend for the first time. And so the yellow flags, I think, have now been cleared. So, Andy Lees has gone past the pits with his left front wing sort of ajar on the front of his car. So watch out for that as he comes past. It might fall off. If it doesn't, you might get a black and orange mechanical flag as a warning for the damage that he's carrying at the moment. Through Jim Clark S's for the second time. Hoffman tried to extend the advance. He was nearly 5.5 tenths ahead of what was then David Yates at that point in time. But they race off towards the back of the circuit and now out towards the corners of Sunny In and Sunny Out. And now they're making their way onto that back straight, back towards the complex for the second time. This leading group of about 6 or 7 cars is quite close. Harry Landy's at the back of that, and now we're looking here. And Andrew Murgatroyd being chased down by Sam Bailey. So Sam Bailey in that sort of black car with the martini stripes down the side, making decent progress in one of his first few Caterham races. So he made his name in Mazdas, as is also his son Jake Bailey. So good to see Sam back out in another small sports car, making his Caterham debut this weekend. So onto the pit straight now for the end of lap number 2, and it's Hoffman that leads still, but now he's got Pete Walters in the slipstream to try and close him down on the run towards Clairvaux to start lap 3. So fast and frantic at this first point in time, and of course it's going to be tricky for these drivers because they qualified in essentially bone dry conditions. We have had that small sprinkling of rain. It's now down the inside where Pete Walters tried to make it stick, ran wide on the exit, and Hoffman went straight through on the undercut, so back into second place. It might have killed his momentum a little bit, but now as Thompson's now into third place past Yates, he'll be trying to charge through. He's been doing the winning all through the last few races of the season. Last couple of meetings, it's been all about Lewis Thompson, and he's not hanging around. He's got past David Yates. Now he's looking to the inside for second place, up past Pete Walters, underbrakes into Tower Corner, and he makes the move stick. So Lewis Thompson really isn't hanging around here. He's up to second place and already coming up to challenge the current, at the moment, double defending champion. As we said, he was Hoffman was Road Sport champion in 2019 and 270R champion in 2020. He's got quite a mountain to climb on these last few metres if he wants to try and make it 3 on the bounce. As David Yates now tries to make an attack on Pete Walters, who, quite frankly, can't afford to keep on losing positions like this if he wants to try and keep on to his lead. Of course, those drop scores that will come into play might help if he starts to gain points back if he has worse results. But we'll have to take a look at those in a second as the race continues to develop. It's a half-an-hour race, so 30 minutes. And as this race carries on, it might well be this story continues on. Now, Thompson's gone up the inside into the complex past Hoffman. Round the outside at the second part of the complex goes Pete Walters. And also in the blue and black car, that's David Yates, who started on the front row. He might try to get himself involved. Walters tries to elbow him out wide over the curb and just about holds on, and Yates will try and get the run off the corner as well. He's swarming over the back of Hoffman. I think possibly missed the gear because he's lost out of place to the Yates, and also now to Harry Cook as they come down the pit straight. And what was Andy McHugh in a lead briefly for Lars Hoffman is seen tumble from first down to fifth in the space of a single lap. That's how quickly it can change in Caterham racing, as we both well know.
Dear me, it continues to change there as they head through Clairvaux once again. It's getting a bit frisky out there at the moment, isn't it? That was the number 21 of Harry Landy, the green car, coming out on top of that, ahead of number 13, which was Wingfield, James Wingfield. This battle going on behind that lead group. I think part of this sort of slightly jumbled start to the race, Scott, has been because of the weather conditions. It's definitely a bit drizzly out there at the moment, and that will make this circuit quite slippery. The lead battle comes out through Tower Corner, and these four of them really tripping over each other. I don't think anyone really wants to lead, though, because if you're leading as the conditions worsen, you're the first to discover just how slippery it is, and you can see there the rain on the camera lens, so it's definitely getting tricky out there.
Yeah, definitely affected the road sport competitors when they were out there for qualifying just now before the racing got underway, so those guys know exactly what that's about, but I'm surprised there wasn't a slight possible... I think the conditions didn't deteriorate enough for it to be a two-green flag, that's rather than just the one, but as they head down towards the complex, they certainly seem to be adapting okay. It looks like whatever rain we did have has abated for the moment, but as we said, Pete Walters back into the lead, and Lewis Thompson here is in a bit of an unusual position because the last couple of meetings, he's really been the one that's been dominating so far, but Pete Walters back on form. It's interesting to see that now that he's back in the mix, that Thompson's got to do the chasing, where effectively Thompson's been the one that's had everyone chasing him in the last couple of meetings.
Yeah, most definitely. Speaking of chasing, Harry Landy there, having got into 5th place at the start of that lap, has already bridged the gap to the leaders. So we've got no longer a 4-car fight for the lead, but about an 8 or 9-car one as they dive through the first couple of corners once again. Side by side in the background there, as a move had just been completed by number 84, Andrew Murgatroyd there, who's shed his right rear wing, it would seem, in his attempts to defend that position from number 73, which is Sam Bailey, who started on the back row of the grid. So Bailey coming through nicely. The leaders are side by side again, are they? Heading down towards the braking zone. Thompson's back through into the race lead then. Walters defending his inside line, pulls it to Harry Cook round the outside, and that was very, very close between he and the number 15 of David Yates, who slots back in line in 4th position. Typical Caterham racing this, though, isn't it, really? They're going to stay this close together, I would imagine, for most of the next 20 minutes, and it's only really that last couple of laps where they'll be pushing hard to get to the front. Thompson, though, leading strongly at the moment.
Yeah, you're not wrong. This is pretty much Caterham racing from start to finish in these races. Usually everyone gets into a pack, stays there, and as they start to fight more and more, the cars behind start to latch on and make that leading group bigger and bigger. Now, Hoffman, who's been dropped back a little bit, he is now, once again, behind Wingfield. He's coming back into the complex, and he is now behind Wingfield at this point. He's down to 7th place. At one point, he was in the leads. At the back of this group now in the red and white car, number 70. And again, as I mentioned, if these first few cars start to continue fighting, it's going to bring the second group of cars behind, thereby Andrew Murgatroyd back into the mix. He will bring with him Bailey, Christie, Price and Curtis, which means it's not just a 7-car trend we've got here, it could be more than 10 in this lead group, and it's not uncommon that they start to fight amongst each other, and it becomes like NASCAR when they have tandem driving, and that bigger patch should be intriguing. Looking down the outside from the lead there was Lewis Thompson to get past Walters. He defended it nicely on the inside through Clairvaux and up through Hawthorns, but now here comes Harry Cook off the tail of the 79s. They come up through towards the S's, and at the moment David Yates is doing a fine defensive job from Harry Landy and James Wingfield, who seems to have found quite a bit of pace this season into 6th position, and he's dropping Lars Hoffman. So Hoffman seems to be maybe not loving these slightly greasy conditions, but also the setup might not be treating him well and might have been a bit rocked after he lost 5 positions in one lap.
Harry Cook there around the outside to the lead from 3rd position going out of the chicane, but then disappears, does he? Down at... yes, he's gone off. Harry Cook has gone off at Tower Corner. He got into Tower as the leader, but he came out very, very wide over the grass. So perhaps the slippery conditions catching the number 9 car out, and he's fallen right to the back now of this pack. That puts Thompson back in the lead. Walters 2nd, and Yates now, David Yates, the blue car, number 15, into 3rd place. But that is a disaster for Harry Cook then, 2nd in the points coming into this weekend, and he'd just taken the lead. He'd taken advantage of a mistake for Pete Walters coming out of the chicane. That backed up Thompson, gave Cook the run, but then so easy to miss your braking point down at Tower. It's really fast, it's slightly downhill, it's a very bumpy braking zone as well, and that little mistake for Harry Cook, I reckon, has dropped him outside of the top half dozen now.
Out to the hairpin. Thompson now will try and make the sprint down towards Clairvaux with Walters in his slipstream as they head down there. Now Lars Hoffman's got what his front left wing's been dislodged. It's going to have to fall off by itself. Otherwise, he might get a black and orange flag by the clerk of the course for possibly having a piece of bodywork that could cause a problem for other drivers around him. There's a scrap going on between Harry Landy and the green car, number 21, and the sort of orangey red and yellow car of James Wingfield. Lars Hoffman stayed with them as they turned through, so this is now course battle for 5th, 6th and 7th after Harry Cook dropped back to 8th position after his off at Tower Corner. But the leaders, as they run wide and exit the S's, using all the track and a little bit more than they might be allowed, as Thompson now fires it up the inside into Tower, but Walters breaks that a little bit later, just trying to hold on as best he can as he turns in. So this should be quite intriguing as they turn back into the right hand and back down, but now they're side by side on the exit. A better run off Tower corner allows not only Thompson to get through, but look at the way David Yates was side by side heading into Jim Clark-Esses. They were very close just outside our commentary box window, but Yates quite smartly, I think, Handy, backed out of that before there was quite possibly something that I didn't really want to think about.
Yeah, that would not likely have ended well. Running side by side through the Jim Clark-Esses is not advisable, especially with still 19 minutes and 40 seconds to go. There is absolutely no point in sending it with a wild move like that. At this stage, on the final lap, maybe, but right now, better to keep your powder dry so they come back through the complex then. 4 of them for the lead again now, because Harry Landy has definitely reeled them in a little bit, and Harry Landy has not yet had a podium this season, has he? In fact, this is by far his best showing so far in 2021. The green car there in 4th place. He's just struggling to keep in touch with the leaders, but once those top 3 start fighting again, which is imminent, I would say, he seems to close back in again. So Harry Landy for the podium, that would be a good story, wouldn't it?
You do find often drivers that are having the opportunities where they'll get a chance to get themselves in the pack and haven't quite had that first podium or that first win, but they just stick in that lead pack there or thereabouts and trying to find an opportunity to try and pounce and try and get themselves a little bit of glory for their own. They come out of the S's now onto the back straight, and again, a couple of cars running a little bit wide as they start to close in, and now we see Yates has got a double toe from Walters and Thompson as those two start to go into combat again. Walters fires it back down the outside, but Thompson, ever defiant on the brakes on the inside, holds on, but we know how strong the undercut is on the exit of that corner. Yates is trying to come back at Walters. He's trying to put himself just about alongside to come up towards the S's. We're looking back there, I think that's Jeff Price getting involved there with Sam Bailey as they come up through the Jim Clark-Esses again, and they're side by side almost with the lead as Walters gets right onto the tail underneath the roll cage of Lewis Thompson, back through Barcroft and up towards Sunny in and Sunny out. So Thompson back in that lead position, but not as commanding as we've seen in the last few races, and that's crucial particularly if Walters wants to keep himself in touch to hold on to his championship lead, but also if Thompson wants to keep himself in contention to potentially steal this championship, as he's not that far away on drop scores, but actually he leads on drop scores, forgive me. They were a little bit sort of jumbled up, so Thompson leads by 7 points from Walters, so every point that Thompson can take from Walters now gives him a much better chance of getting the title as we come into these last couple of rounds.
The problem for Lewis, though, is that he didn't race at Donington Park the season opener, so he missed those 3 races. Now, they become his 3 dropped scores that all drivers have to make, but that means he can't afford a DNF. Another DNF now, he can't count that as an extra drop score. They're allowed a maximum, well, they all have to drop 3 results. However, his hit rate for race victories this year, Lewis Thompson, has been extraordinary, hasn't it? Every single race that he has entered, 2 at Knock Hill, 2 at Silverstone, 2 at Brands Hatch, he's won them all. So he's on course to keep that unbroken win record going here today. But as you say, he's got slightly stiffer opposition, it would seem. Again, 1 or 2 of the leaders there and a bit wide over the grass. In fact, that looked like it was David Yates maybe who made the mistake, and that will allow, I think, the green machine of Harry Landy to attack for 3rd place. On the outside line he goes. Can he get the job done? No, not quite. Yates fends him off, but that defensive drive now from the blue number 15 car has just allowed the top 2 to escape, and those top 2 are side by side again going into the Jim Clark-Esses. That looks to me like, well, they're still side by side coming out the other side, and that gap that they had over Yates evaporates immediately. Into 2nd place goes David Yates. What a great example, Scott, of how much time you lose from running side by side. Yates was, what, 3/4 of a second behind them going out of Tower. A corner later, he's into 2nd place.
It's tally-ho time for David Yates at this point. He's absolutely flying at this point. And we saw the opportunity, and almost felt just carved away through, like, excuse me, Peter, out of the way, I'll come through, even if it is at Jim Clark-Esses. So David Yates is certainly going for it. He's a popular figure in the paddock, and I'm certain that if he does get the victory here, it will certainly be a popular victory amongst everyone, both his competitors and those within Caterham, because he is someone who quite a few people like as a character. He is on the tail of Lewis Thompson as they come out of the hairpin. Now they're going to head down. They're all in with 1 big toe here. The biggest beneficiary of this big toe is going to be Harry Landy. He'll get a triple toe from the 3 cars in front. Whether he can make a pass or not remains to be seen. So they head down towards Clairvaux, possibly in the mix here, but no one's making a move and just keeping the powder dry here. No one was close enough to make that pass and make that dive up the inside to move a little bit further up alongside. They turn up through Hawthorns now for the 10th time in this first race of the weekend for the CaterhamSeven 310R Championship. Thompson still in command, but David Yates, who we know is very strong off the corners, has got the mother of all runs now to look up the inside line. Look at the way he's got that straight line pace down towards Tower Bend. He's up the inside. Thompson, as he goes deep, he's not going to be able to hold on to this one as they turn in. Not only is Yates going to get through, but Walters goes, if you can leave the door open, Lewis, I'm just going to come past every single day of the week. And they're going to be side by side again. Oh, I almost can't watch. Here comes Harry Landy as well. This could be interesting.
Yeah, he is alongside the third, but bails out of it. It's Yates that gets the lead, though, from Lewis Thompson. So David Yates and Lewis Thompson, two part-timers, really. Neither of them have competed in every round this year. David Yates, though, has got one podium to his credit, a third place at Silverstone, yet to win in 2021. But he finds himself at the point now. Also, keep an eye to the car, I think, yes, right on shot there. Harry Cook going up the inside of Harry Landy. So Cook has finally got himself back into this group now after his off at Tower. He's in 6th place as they come through the complex, and he's now starting to think about moving into contention once again. Do not count Harry out of this race. We've still nearly got half of it to go, Scott.
And also, so I wouldn't count out either the guys in 6th and 7th, which is Harry Cook, who is recovering after that off he had earlier on at Tower Bend. And also, this man, Lars Hoffman, had a bit of an up and down race in this first part, but the second part, he might come a bit stronger now he's in that leading pack. Now there's a, oh, it's up the inside goes David Yates. He's done the move up the inside, under brakes into Clairvaux. Through goes David Yates. So Yates is up into the lead now at the expense of Lewis Thompson, and now it's James Wingfield taking up the mantle, because watch him in 4th position. He's moved past Harry Landy. He's now into that deep inside that top 5 position, and he is now right on the tail of these three. So genuinely, any one of these 7 cars could at least find themselves on the podium, let alone win this race. And that's what makes it so fascinating. 14 minutes to go. There is no telling who the favourite is at this point.
Oh, Yates and Thompson side by side. Every time they arrive at Tower Corner, I'm convinced one of them is about to fire themselves off into the farmer's field, but somehow they all just about get it stopped. Harry Cook, by the looks of it, is into 5th place now, so he's ahead of Harry Landy. So Harry Cook then, second in the points, as we've said, winless so far this year, though, thanks in no short part, I'm sure, to Lewis Thompson's dominance over the last 3 events. But Harry Cook is really looking to try and get that first victory and properly cement his place as a championship contender. That off at Tower didn't help him, but there he is. Look, the number 9 car heads up the back straight towards the complex into the top 5. His next target then is going to be James Wingfield, who started this race 8th, by the way, the red car with the yellow highlights and the yellow roll cage. He's in 4th position now. It really goes to show that qualifying only tells half of the story. Towards the hairpin they go then, seeing very little overtaking into the hairpin so far, because they all know that they can rely on that slipstream down the back straight into Tower to do most of their overtaking. So that is definitely going to be the crucial part of the circuit, I think, on that final lap, Scott.
Yeah, particularly with the potential to try and outbrake your rivals, that sort of tight hairpin. Even though it is quite a slow corner, the opportunity for drivers to try and sneak up the inside and make a last-minute dive is always possible, particularly if we're close enough. So definitely watch out for any last-minute moves if we do get them in that last complex before the checkered flag. And of course, there's the long sprint down the pit straight, which, like in Tower Bend, we'll see drivers trying to break the toe as much as possible. We could see a photo finish, as it's always possible in Caterham races, every single time we do get them out on track. 12.5 minutes to go. David Yates is back on the attack. He's now back behind Lewis Thompson now, up the inside of Harry Cook. The recovering Harry Cook has gone James Wingfield. Just got in front of James Wingfield. That was very close. That always made a little bit of touch, the sort of rear end to front nose. And these front noses can dislodge a little bit easier if you get too much, if you bump them too much. But Thompson now back in that lead position. But again, as I said earlier on, not in the dominant position that we've seen in times before. These guys are giving quite the runaround in what's already this exciting first race, and there is still 12 minutes to go, so there's quite a lot that can change and will change if Harry Landy keeps running wide like that, exiting Sunny out as Hoffman goes to tail him down towards the complex. So all sorts going on in these top 7, but so far at the moment Thompson back in front, but Yates and co are certainly on the prowl, and at any moment, any corner, they could pounce and possibly take it back from him.
I will say though, Lewis is leading the race well, isn't he? You're right, he's not got a big lead, but he is holding the lead lap after lap after lap. Even if he loses it temporarily halfway around the circuit, he always seems to be back in front again by the time they get into that final sequence of corners. So that bodes well for the end of the race. It's very hard to defend a lead usually. Oh, contact for second place, and that's going to disrupt Harry Cook again. That was a real attempt to get up the inside by Pete Walters. Harry Cook now gets elbowed out wide by James Wingfield into Hawthorne corner. That was not Harry's fault really. Pete Walters launched it up the inside of David Yates. They made contact at Clairvaux, and Harry Cook had nowhere to go, slammed on the brakes to avoid them, and then got a hip and shoulder for Wingfield, and that splits the pack now. Yates somehow survived that in second place, and he and Lewis Thompson now have a gap over Walters third. Wingfield up the inside there for fourth. I think that's Lars Hoffman, isn't it? He was repassing through Tower Corner. and poor old Harry Cook, through no fault of his own, has it all to do again.
Yeah, for the second time already this morning, so must be thinking it's Groundhog Day, thinking, oh, I've been here once before, I'm going to try and do it all again now. So the man who certainly is still in the prime seat, behind Lewis Thompson, that is David Yates, because the one thing they always say in Caterham racing is, ironically, the worst place that you want to be in a Caterham race is in the lead, out of the last corner, on the last lap, because as we both know, there is absolutely no guarantee that you will stay in the lead by the time you get to the checkered flag, if your main rival behind in second is right underneath your roll cage, so to speak. So watch for these two out front if they get to pull away. This could also be a bit of a tactic here as well, because these two might see a chance to work together, because two Caterhams in the air together work better than one, so possibly these could punch quite a bigger hole in the air, and these two could start to draw away, so we could see in these last few 10 minutes or so, Andy, a one-on-one battle for the lead, whilst Pete Walters tries to catch up for third, and they might well get separated and be in their own individual fight for third, whilst the top two draw away.
Well, the gap at the moment is 1.5 seconds between second and third, but we have a new second place man. It's now Lewis Thompson, so David Yates, not working with him, wants to go ahead of him and get back into the lead. You'd have thought David would still be catching his breath after that a heck of a whack that he took at Clervaux a lap ago. How he's still in this race is a bit of a miracle. Not only is he in it though, he's leading the way as they head out to the chicane once again. There's Pete Walters then, his aggressor, in third place. James Wingfield trying to challenge for that position into Tower Corner. Lewis Thompson is back in the lead now. What's going on for third? It is still going to be Walters ahead of Wingfield, but Wingfield has the better exit from Tower and gets to the right-hand side of the road. That will potentially give him a chance to get back through the Jim Clark S's. Has he done it? Yes, he has. So Wingfield then back into third spot now, and fighting hard for it there with Pete Walters, whose car may also have sustained some damage after that contact with David Yates. So Thompson back in front then, Yates second, Wingfield in third position. James Wingfield, I believe, has he had yes, he has had a few podiums, but he's not won a race yet this season. If he's going to, he needs to really work with Pete Walters here to close back in on the leading two. To the eye though, Scott, I would say the gap between second and third is creeping down again. It was 1.5 seconds at the line. I think it's a bit less than that now.
Well, it might not creep down too much more if Wingfield keeps on battling with Pete Walters, unless he starts to drag the rest of the pack with him. He might just start signaling to Pete, don't fight me, let's go and try and catch the cars in front of us, because if we don't start to work together, they're going to start pulling away. The gap now across the line has gone from what was 1.5 down to 0.7, so I think they have started to get the message a little bit as they come down back towards Clervaux. Lap 15 with about just 8.25 minutes to go. There's Harry Landy then just ahead of Lars Hoffman, and then recovering Harry Cook, who's in that position again for the second time. He's got to do it all again, try and pick his way back through the order, as David Yates has now hit the front. So Yates has got past Thompson. That must have been on the exit through Clervaux and Hawthorns, but Thompson will come back at him on the back straight as they come down towards it. You're just seeing there Wingfield. There's the leaders. Back down the outside goes Thompson, gets the lead back before they even turn in under brakes through Tower. But now James Wingfield is in the mixing car, number 13. He says 13 is an unlucky number as he comes down towards it. Oh, one car's off the road. Is that Hoffman? I think that's Lars Hoffman's off the road. I recognise the motor on the back of that car. It is parked on the run down towards Tower. Looking outside of our window, it might be just parked behind the marshal's post, I think, from our commentary box view. But now as they come out through the Jim Clark S, he's back towards Barcroft again. And then the sunny corners, Thompson still leads. Yates is still in second, but James Wingfield is there in third. Double wave yellows are there, and it is Lars Hoffman. So Hoffman then, unfortunately, more woes for the German. He's out of the race, unfortunately, in the closing stages. That will mean, unfortunately, Andy, he's already had a couple of non-finishes so far this season, so therefore that's not going to do his points title or his potential title chances any good whatsoever.
No, it's not, is it? He had that win, didn't he, back at Donington Park, but that's the only time he's been on the podium. And yeah, those two non-finishes, or non-scores at least, at Knock Hill, mean that this will now become his third 0-pointer of the season so far. And this will therefore take up the space of his final drop score. Right, into the final 7 minutes of racing then. It's flown by, hasn't it? We're back to one big lead pack again, because as Lewis Thompson once again gets back ahead of David Yates for the lead, you can see that James Wingfield and Pete Walters and Harry Landy and Harry Cook almost are right back with them, certainly 4 for the lead as they go back out through the chicane. And Lewis Thompson continues to be the man that can stay out in front. He may well lose the lead down the back straight here. Actually, no, David Yates, oh, he couldn't because there are yellow flags out, so he will not lose the lead this time, Lewis Thompson. But he always seems to be able to get back ahead when it counts at the end of the lap. And it doesn't matter on that last lap whether you lead through the first 2/3 of it. You only have to have the lead out of the final corner and across the line. So Lewis Thompson, I think, has... it's definitely his race to lose at the moment, unless Yates and Wingfield and Walters can shuffle him back in the pack a bit. But so far, that hasn't happened.
Yeah, we have to remember that Lewis Thompson, if you've been watching, essentially, ever since Knock Hill, he has been undefeated. So if you look at how many races that he's managed to put together, he's put together 6 race wins on the bounce, and that's 6 race wins plus a fast as that, ever since he didn't do the first 3 rounds at as Andy alluded to, the first round of Donington, which means that every single score he gets has to count, and it has to be a top score. And that's incredible that even on drop scores, that he's actually able to get himself into the lead of the championship on drop scores by 7 coming into the weekend. So this will be a pretty sensational performance for him. But of course, we've got to watch out for David Yates, who his best results, I keep an eye on the battle down towards turn 1. He's back down in 15th in points, but his best result so far this season has been a 3rd place, and that was at the first 2 races at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit a couple of meetings ago. So if he gets second, it'll be his best finish of the season. As for James Wingfield, who's 3rd in the points, his best result so far has been a 2nd place, and that was at the 3rd race at Donington Park. So he has been higher than 3rd place before. He's had a couple of 3rd positions throughout the season. But now through Tower Bend, out of the S's and down the back straight, and that must have been a missed gear, because looks like, ooh, that's interesting. Now, that's intriguing, because David Yates got past, but did he get past 4? Oh, car off the road. There's a car off the road down at Clairvaux. I was so busy looking at the battle down the back straight, I didn't spot the car that was off the road. Now, again, can't see the number, so unfortunately, I'm not sure if it was in the lead group. We'll have to see if there's someone missing from that lead group, see who it might well be. I think that top 6 are still there, so I'll have to wait and see what the order is. Now, meanwhile, David Yates has got through. Now, the one thing I was questioning was, David Yates got through, but did he do so just before? Well, that's interesting. He got through just before they got to the yellow flags. Meanwhile, red flag is out, race has been stopped, and I figure it might well be called there with 4.5 minutes to go as a result. So what they'll do is they'll count it back a lot, which means I think Lewis Thompson will get his 7th win in a row, which is quite sensational. So despite David Yates getting through, they will do count back on the last complete lap. And unfortunately, while David Yates might be in front, he may well have to settle for 2nd place. But it will be his best result of the season, so he'll certainly be kept pleased with that. So red flag, race has been stopped here in this first race of the weekend for the CaterhamSeven 310R Championship. And just for the benefit of how it looks, again, it'll go for the last complete lap, I think, which was lap lap 16. So if it counts as it says on the screen, it should be Lewis Thompson who picks up his 7th win in a row. Again, undefeated since he began racing at the 2nd rounds that we had at Knock Hill, because he missed Donington Park, as we mentioned. 2nd then should be David Yates, and 3rd should be James Wingfield. So congratulations to them. We'll get a confirmation to see if they do reset the timing screen at all or not. They're coming into the pit lane, but it's showing David Yates in front, but it shouldn't be, because Thompson was ahead, for as far as I could see, when they came across the last complete lap. So just before we finish up this race, we'll give you quickly the results. So David Yates then picks up the victory. Sorry, I think it should be Lewis Thompson who picks up the victory, as he was in front of the last complete lap. David Yates should be 2nd, and then Walters 3rd. It's then, Wingfield 3rd, Walters 4th, Harry Landy is 5th, and then from Cook in 6th position, Murgatroyd 7th, and then it's Jeff Price 8th, Douglas Christie 9th, Alan Curtis in the top 10, then it's Welch, Metcalf and Bullock. And then I think the 2 cars that have been involved, I think possibly Sam Bailey's the car that went off, because he's the one that's gone tumbling down the timing sheet, sadly. So car number 73, Sam Bailey, appears to be the one I think that's been off the road down at Clairvaux, causing the stoppage. And then we have Henry Williams, who has just been reversing up the pit straight towards the top here. Should be classified 15th. Andy Lees will be 16th, and then Lars Hoffman will be the retiree after he stopped on the back straight with whatever mechanical issue he had down there. So unfortunate for Lars, but again, that should declare the result, I believe, in Lewis Thompson's favour. The timing screen is still showing and the order as they came into the pit lane, but I believe they should count it back and give it to Lewis Thompson, I imagine. If they do give it to David Yates, then it might well have been something that I didn't spot, but I imagine that that result possibly will be reversed, because it says laps completed 17, but it should be after 16 complete laps when the red flag came out. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how that result changes, if at all. But of course, next coming up, we've got our 2nd Caterham race, our 2nd race before we go into the lunch break. Then we have one more Caterham race, I believe, for the Caterham Road Sports, and then we have our main event for today, which is the 4-hour Fun Cup Endurance Championship race, which usually, despite the race length, is always pretty entertaining from start to finish, and that will be certainly quite a fun one, particularly off the back of one of the best races of the season last time out at Alton Park. So cars have made their way down toward the assembly area. We'll be heading, at least on our live stream coverage. If you want to watch the live stream coverage, we'll be able to throw down to Andy McEwen, who'll have a chat to a couple of the drivers on the live stream for the next race, which will be the CaterhamSeven 270R Championship, I believe. I will just double check that on my timetable. And then as we go through to the next few rounds, we'll be able to see how this next series plays out. So we should have the 270R cars come up next. And we'll give you some more information on those very shortly. So, just to check the timetable, just to make sure where we are. So, yes, 270Rs will be next, then we have our lunch break, and then we have our sport and African endurance. So, just to recap on the live stream for our results, it's then showing, as I predicted on the counter lap back, so it's Lewis Thompson that's declared the winner by virtue of being in front of the last complete lap. David Yates is second, then it's James Winfield third, Pete Waltz is fourth, and Harry Landy is fifth. Then it's Harry Cook, Andrew Murgatroyd, Jeff Price, Douglas Christie, and Sam Bailey will be classified 10th, as he was in 10th before he went off. Then it's Alan Curtis, Henry Williams is 12th, Welch is 13th, then it's Bullock, Metcalf and Lees, and the only car we didn't have running was Lars Hoffman, who stopped on the back straight down towards Tower. So Thompson then does indeed pick up his 7th win of the season, in a row we should say, because ever since he joined, we have to wait and see. So we're going to hand down to Andy, who's going to have a chat to some of our 270R drivers before they get underway for their first race of the weekend on the live stream here at Croft Circuit.